will say this, and a lot of times agents are afraid to kind of tell it the way it is. My phone is not ringing as much as it normally does. And October is one of my best months, one of my favorite months when it comes to real estate. And, people have been asking me, is it a good time to sell, buy, invest? And I just say, hey, it's complicated, right? Because we just cannot keep these numbers in line when it comes to the rates and what people can afford and can't afford.
I feel like at this point, we spent so many months now talking about eventually you're going to start to see this wave of increasing rates really start to have an effect. And, early on, I think you started to see people that were kind of on the sidelines get into the game because they were worried, right? Rates are going to price people out. It's going to slow down. The market's going to start to, correct a little bit. And, we talk about CNBC and MSNBC and all these other publications with all these crazy headlines, right? The market is crashing. Prices dropped for the first time in 2 years, but they're still so over historical prices, right? I mean, you're still talking home values are still up year over year dramatically. They're just not up. They're just not continuing to increase, right?
Right. So I guess here's my analogy, right? For each agent that you talk to is always in a different position, right? So here's my analogy. Imagine like there's all these different types of boats. And when you're a new agent, you're kind of like in a small rickety boat and you're trying to build that boat. So when Pat talks about a wave, a good wave comes, it's like, oh, I feel that, right? Like it kind of moves your boat around big time and you feel like your boat's going to tip over. Now, if you have a veteran agent who has built a lot of business and is just continuing to go out there and I don't want to say ignoring, but just going with the flow of everything, and they have a cruise ship, you're on a cruise ship, that thing feels most of the time steady as can be, even if a wave comes into it. So I think there's going to be certain parts. So if I invite all the agents in the office to come in, some would say, yeah, I know it's a huge change, but I know it's a change as far as maybe not as many calls, maybe not as many showings as I normally go on. But however, my world is still okay, right? So I'm still getting deals done. As far as prices go, I'm showing a lot of houses and I'm saying to the clients, this house is way overpriced now. And I think it's going to be more of a realization to sellers that, my house is not worth what it was. And those are going to be some hard conversations to have. So maybe that's where the expireds come back in, right? An expired house is basically a house that did not sell the first time when it was on the market. So now I don't know if agents are. So let's say like I'm having a meeting with Pat, and Pat wants to sell his house, and he says, "Hey, well, my neighbor sold his house for $500,000. I'm going to sell mine for $550,000." And I'm like, well, yeah, maybe. That's what I've been saying to my clients. Maybe let's give it a weekend, but if it's not selling the weekend, it's probably not worth $550,000. But sometimes they're even up even more. And then you have to have these conversations later on. That's like, well, it's not worth. And I think it's an agent's responsibility to look at their seller and say, you know what, I would love to sell your house for the most amount of money possible, but it's not worth this. And I'm not the agent to do it, because I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and be like, yep, guess what? We're going to get all this money for you when we're not. So to answer do we see the wave? Yes and no. I guess it's how well established your business is and how aggressive you're being.
Yeah, how well you can insulate yourself from, market fluctuation. And it sounds like, kind of the longer obviously you've been around, the more established your practices and the more known you are in the community and kind of the more deals you got right under your belt.
Yeah.
This is probably those people, you're still going to do a good job for people and still have those phone calls. And I think if you're someone it sounds like someone who's newer, right, in this last 18, 24 months of the real estate gold rush that ran in and maybe didn't develop good habits or just wasn't around long enough, they're going to have some struggles coming in.
Right. And I think the thing is too, and I mentioned this, we had a meeting this week and I said to a lot of the experienced agents, I said, hey, look, just because you're experienced, like I'm not taking this for granted, right? Like I'm going to start doing a lot of stuff that maybe the new agents do as they kind of get going because I think we're going to have to go back to basics. I think we're going to have to take a big old piece of humble pie. The holidays are around and I do love my pie. Adam Sandler, little piece of pie. That was it. That was my quick Adam Sandler. But I think what's going to happen is we're going to have, you can't just say, oh, I'm so well established that I'm invincible. That's not going to be the case. We're going to have to do a lot more door knocking, a lot more calls, a lot more things that we weren't doing before because the leads were just kind of coming right through the door. So I want to say like, hey, we're in a good spot, especially this team, because we're absolutely still killing it. It doesn't really matter. But we're in our own little world when it comes to this team, right? Most of us are doing fantastic. We kind of ignore the noise and we just kind of go with what we're seeing, what we witness. So we don't really care. We see the articles, we know the information, but we're doing our own thing over here. And so I can look at it however I want to look at it. It's the end, or I can say, hey, you know what? I still have to pay bills. I still have things I have to take care of, and we're gonna keep going at it.